Let's get right into it. Every organization is programmed, but not with code or, boring policy manuals. They're programmed by the stories they tell themselves. And these stories, they shape literally everything, every decision, every single interaction, and they ultimately decide what that company becomes. It really all boils down to this one powerful idea. We are, at our core, the sum of our stories. And look, this isn't just some nice-sounding philosophical quote. It's a hard and fast rule for any team, any company. The narratives we repeat over and over, that's what creates the culture we actually live in day to day. So that brings up the big question, right? The one that really matters for you. What story is your organization telling right now, as we speak? Is it a story about playing it safe and being afraid to fail? Or is it a story about trust and what's possible? Let's dig into what separates the truly great cultures from, well, everyone else. Okay, so it all starts with the foundation. The most fundamental story any group can tell is whether it's safe to be honest. Is this a place built on trust, where people feel they can speak up, or is it built on fear, where the smart move is just to keep your mouth shut? Think about this number for a second. 3.5 million. That's not profit. That's not sales. That's the number of fake bank and credit card accounts that were created at Wells Fargo. But the number itself? That's not even the real story. The real story is the culture that made it happen. So what was the cause? It was a culture of fear, plain and simple. See, employees were given these totally impossible sales quotas. And when they tried to raise a red flag and tell management, hey, these goals are crazy, they were punished. They got labeled as not a team player, or worse, just fired. It left them with this horrible choice. Either cheat to keep your job or tell the truth and lose it. The system was practically begging for a disaster like this. Now, let's flip that coin completely. Let's look at a different number from a completely different kind of culture. At the Ritz-Carlton, every single employee, from the general manager to the person cleaning the rooms, has the power to spend up to $2,000 per guest to fix a problem. And get this, no manager approval needed. None. And that is the difference, right there in action. By trusting its people, the Ritz-Carlton tells a story of empowerment and confidence. And guess what? That trust doesn't lead to people throwing money away. It leads to creative, legendary customer service, because people are actually free to solve problems, not just follow some rigid script. That's what a foundation of psychological safety really looks like. So once you've got that foundation of safety, you need a direction, right? A great culture gives everyone a compass, a shared purpose that guides every single decision. It makes sure everyone is marching toward the same North Star, because without that, even the most successful companies can just drift away into nothing. Just look at this timeline. It's a tragic story of a company that had absolutely everything, except a clear purpose. Back in the late 90s, Yahoo was the king of the internet. But they never really figured out what their end game was. Were they a media company, a tech company? They tried to be everything, and because of that, they ended up being nothing. This lack of a compass is what led them to pass on buying Google, then later desperately try to sell to Microsoft, and it all ended in an almost complete collapse. Now compare that chaotic drift to the laser focus at Amazon. In high-stakes meetings, Jeff Bezos famously had an empty chair in the room. Why? That chair represented the customer, the most important person there. It was a simple, constant compass. When teams couldn't agree, they wouldn't ask, what's best for my department? They'd look at the chair and ask, what would the customer want us to do? That one little ritual made sure every big decision served one clear, unwavering purpose. Okay, so a safe environment and a clear purpose, super important. But they're not quite enough. You still need an engine to actually move forward. And that engine is empowerment. But, and this is a huge but, it has to be the right kind of empowerment. It's not just about giving people power. It's about aligning that power toward a common goal. This brings us to a really cool idea called creating a condition. The absolute best leaders, they don't just stand up and yell, "Provide great service." Instead, they carefully design an environment where providing great service feels like the most natural, obvious, and logical thing to do. Zappos is the absolute masterclass in this. They wanted legendary customer service, but instead of forcing it with scripts and call quotas, they created the perfect conditions for it to just happen. They got rid of call time limits. They pay people salaries, rewarding the quality of the call, not the quantity. And they gave every single rep the authority to solve problems on their own. See, they didn't tell people to be amazing. They built a system where being amazing was easy and felt good. And this gets right to the heart of what alignment means.
At Zappos, everyone was empowered to play one single game, deliver amazing service. Now, compare that to WeWork. At WeWork, every department was empowered to win its own separate game. Real estate was killing it signing leases, sales was killing it signing up members. The problem? You had 10 different teams all winning their individual battles, which led to the company as a whole losing the war spectacularly.
So, when you start to put all these pieces together, you see that great cultures aren't magic. They don't just happen by accident. No, they're intentionally designed. They're built piece by piece, story by story.
This is the architecture. This is the blueprint. It starts with that foundation of safety, so people feel they can be honest and take risks. Then it's guided by a shared purpose, so everyone's pulling in the same direction. And finally, it's driven by aligned empowerment, so people have the freedom and the fuel to actually get there. Safety, purpose, and empowerment. That's the code.
Which of course brings us right back to where we started. Culture is a story, and the beautiful thing about stories is they can be rewritten. So the final question this whole thing leaves us with is a really powerful one. What story are you going to choose to tell next?